Well, hello, everyone. My name is Erica Tiffany Wells, and I am excited about tonight. I mean, we have an amazing guest, one that I am just fascinated with, inspired by. She's just an incredible woman, has an incredible story. I've been on panels with her before where I'm just sitting there in awe, listening to her story, her struggle, her charisma. I will let Carrie share more about her, but I'm just so excited because this is our anniversary. You guys may not know it, but this is our 1 year anniversary this month. It was 1 year ago in August that we came together to decide to start WOCAN. And to have all of you sharing this incredible journey with us is just absolutely amazing. And I am just so excited to share that news. It started out with a vision, just four of us friends coming together to say, as women in automotive and women of color, we knew we shared similar stories. We knew we shared similar struggles. And to create a community, a tribe, a place where we can come together and network and educate each other and be there for each other and share amazing stories like the one we're going to share tonight and the ones we've shared over the last 12 months is just absolutely incredible. Our membership has grown to almost 500 members right now. And we're just so excited because, again, 1 year ago, it was just a thought. I am so excited to share our four founders, starting with Patrice Banks, CEO of Girls Auto Clinic. If you don't know her, you need to Google her. Girls Auto Clinic is an all-female garage in Philadelphia where you can get your hair done, your nails done, and get a blowout while you're getting your oil changed by all women technicians. She has an incredible story, a good friend of ours, and one of our four founders. And then there's Amanda Gordon, CEO of Gojo Auto, the first Black woman to own her own dealership in the state of Colorado. She is doing amazing things, hit a record month last month. We're so proud of her with 54 units, just absolutely incredible for an independent dealer. And we're so excited about Amanda and myself. I am a sales manager, just excited to be part of such an amazing group. Recently nominated 40 under 40, just so humbled by that. Just so gracious to be nominated and to be among so many wonderful women. And then our president, Mrs. Carrie Wise, VP marketing at AutoFi. I mean, she does an amazing job. She just keeps us going, keeps us organized. She is the industry insider and leader when it comes to speaking on D&I and women's groups and panels. You've seen her all over the industry and just a good friend of mine that I love the most, Carrie Wise.
Thank you so much, Erica. So excited to be here, excited about our anniversary. And it's crazy that it's been a year. Yeah, I remember when we launched on, I think it was August 11th, and we launched the same week that Kamala Harris announced her vice presidency. And it was almost like we were blessed from the Lord because we were covered, in automotive news that week. And that's something that we had never, ever imagined, that level of attention. We thought we were just going to have a club of women of color so we could just talk about our challenges. And that was good enough for us. But to me, it's a reminder that you just have to dream bigger. And part of dreaming bigger was also the corporate support and sponsorship. And we have been so blessed to work with some amazing companies, some amazing leaders. And first, I want to call out Subaru of America. They were one of the first companies to call us. And I'm talking about a week after we launched. And, it was daunting to have Subaru call us to sponsor us because let's just be honest, we didn't have everything together. We weren't a nonprofit yet. We didn't have all our paperwork and all that stuff. And they were still willing to help us and to help us launch this. And it takes so much work than anything you ever see, on this meeting. So we really appreciate Subaru of America. Also, equally a part of our day ones was TrueCar. Now, I worked at the company at the time, and you would say, well, of course they sponsored you, but no, they didn't need to sponsor us at this level. And they have been so supportive, so focused on DEI and improving the culture, not only at TrueCar, but also in the automotive industry. And then Car Global, they are the leaders in remarketing solutions and technology in the automotive industry. Big company. They've also were part of the early companies companies that reached out to us to sponsor. So we really appreciate our sponsors, their support. We could not do that, what we're doing, without you. And we couldn't do it without our members, right? So thank you for being a part of WOCAN, Women of Color Automotive Network, and the movement that we're making in the automotive industry. So want to jump into our speaker for August, and it is Jenell Ross. And Jenell is a trailblazer. She is the president of Bob Ross Automotive Group. They have a Mercedes, Buick, and GMC dealership. They were actually the very first Mercedes dealer to ever be owned by a Black owner. So they were making history at a time where you didn't see as many owners that were people of color or Black. And particularly Jenell has really broken through some barriers. You know, if you look at America, there's 20,000 or so automotive franchise dealers. Only 1,000 of them are owned by women, roughly 70 are owned by women of color, and only 4 in all of America are owned by a Black woman, and she is one of those 4. So we are so happy to have her on. Automotive News leading woman, top 100. I gotta say, I'm with you, Jenell. I was a part of that group in the same class, and I was so honored to be a part of it with you. So without further ado, I want to introduce Jenell Ross.
Well, good evening, everyone. And I am not.
Yeah, let me stop sharing, Jenell, and then I'm gonna let you.
I was on it. I was getting ready.
All right, let's see. Let me give you another. Now try it.
Oh, did I do something wrong?
Nope, that was me. So try. It should work now.
Okay. Oh. See, that's what happens when everybody leaves.
I know.
Here by myself at night.
We'll get it together.
Is that good?
Don't see it yet. Is everybody else? Let me know if you see it. And if not, yeah, try it one more time. Do share screen.
I did that. Hold on. Let me back out and go back. There we go. Let me see. See, that's what happens.
There you go. We rehearsed that like 4 times, right?
I know. I'm sorry.
It was my fault. So, all right, Jenell Ross, let me introduce you again.
Okay, I'm done now that I conquered the PowerPoint and the shared screen. But good evening, everyone. As you can see, I am not the technology savvy one. I'm just used to hitting Zoom and being involved in a meeting. But congratulations to Carrie, Erica, Patrice, and Amanda on what a wonderful journey you've been on for the last year. And I know you guys are proud to get to this point, and we look forward to continuing this ride with you along the way. So this evening, I'm going to share a little bit. Carrie kind of stole a little bit of my thunder on a few things, but that's okay. Going to share a little bit of the story of my family and how we became in the automobile retail side of the business. As you all know, there's many facets of the business to be involved in, but we have been on the retail side. So, and I probably will forget to click this thing, but we're gonna work on this together. So my dad had a dream of creating the Bob Ross Auto Group, and not sure really what he had in mind at that time, but both of my parents were from a small town in Richmond, Indiana. And my dad worked as a lot attendant in high school at a Buick dealership. Little did he know, fast forwarding, my parents get married, they moved to Dayton, Ohio, which is not far from Richmond. My dad becomes an appliance salesperson. As a result of him doing so well, the local Buick dealer in Dayton heard about him and asked him to join his team. So when he did so, he continued to excel. And as people begin to notice him, they said, you know, this young man is going places and needs to be in another part of the auto industry. So around that time is when General Motors, and this is 1972, came up with, or not came up, but launched the General Motors Minority Dealer Program. And my dad had the opportunity to be in that inaugural class. The one thing about my dad, when he passed away, he was the only one still in business as a result of being in that class some 23 or so years later. So my dad had the opportunity, once he graduated from the dealer academy, and lo and behold, the dealership back in Richmond, Indiana, where he had worked at in high school, was the dealership of his first opportunity to purchase that dealership from that gentleman that he had worked with. So never does that typically happen. but something that a very unique opportunity, and to be able to return to your hometown and excel as a business owner, and hopefully having that camaraderie and obviously people and your friends and family coming in to buy vehicles from you. So as a result of my dad becoming an auto dealer, he was a trailblazer as well as a risk taker, and he experienced many firsts in the automobile industry. So as a result of this dealership in 1974, he became the first African-American automobile dealer in the state of Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and West Virginia. And it was a Buick International Harvester Opel store. So for most of you on this Zoom call, probably have not even ever had to deal with International Harvester or Opel. So we're going back a few years. Even I knew about it, but not that much. As a result of this, he was also the first African-American to become an International Harvester dealer as well. After successfully running this dealership in Richmond, Indiana for 5 years, in 1979, he had the opportunity to purchase a larger store where we are sitting today, which was a Buick Mercedes-Benz dealership. So in 1979, that's when my father became the first African-American Mercedes-Benz dealer, and he was the only one until 1995. So growing up and having a dad as a car dealer was great and useful all at the same time. It was fun because when I was, well, you can see me there, was able to come in to work with him and jump in and out of cars and run around on the showroom. And we all know, like, especially right now, we could have parties every day on the showroom because there's no vehicles there. But, it just became something of really importance to me and something that I really enjoyed and liked. And, some would say, hey, let's go play. And I would say, hey, no, I want to go with my dad, to the store. And they're like, why would you want to do that? And I just liked being around automobiles. So in our family, we've already always referenced the dealership as the store. And the other thing that I always liked to do was in high school, college, or even in middle school, if you had a project or a paper that we could do, I always tried to center it on something that I could learn about the automobile industry and take that back even to my dad and his team and see how that could help them. Now, obviously in my early days, he was like, yeah, that's cute. When I was in college, I wrote a paper in regards to the rise and fall of African-American auto dealers. And that kind of caught his attention because I interviewed people that he didn't know I was reaching out to, and just really the pitfalls and the ebbs and flows of what they had experienced. So, but one funny thing, as you continue to get older and you grow, you kind of forget that those that you've grown up with know exactly what your parents do in your environment. So here I go off to college. I'm in Florida A&M University, and people like, what does your dad do? And I was like, oh, he's a dealer. So, I go around saying that for a little bit, and they see me in different cars. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. He's an auto dealer. There could be a negative connotation to that. So we don't want anyone to think negatively of my dad. So that was always kind of a running joke. Once you get outside of automotive, you need to clarify the type of dealer you're talking about. So as I stayed in high school, I had the opportunity to go to a private high school, which really afforded me a great opportunity when I went to college. But the interesting thing, rite of passage is getting your first car, right? So everyone can remember, even if you weren't 16, you just remember getting that first car. And so a lot of my friends were getting Mercedes-Benz 190Es. And I was like, oh, this is going to be perfect. I'm going to have cars just like theirs, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And so I was saying to my dad, hey, all my friends are getting these 190E Mercedes. And he said, yep, they are. Their parents are coming in and they're buying them. And I said, so do I get one of those? And he said, no, you'll be in your Buick Skyhawk hatchback. You can ride in their car. You need to learn and appreciate what it will be like to drive a Mercedes. And so at the time, I didn't really like what, dad was saying, but as I got older, I did appreciate and always go back to him saying that. But again, going back to my education, and my high school afforded us the opportunity to take a month off of school. So in my junior and senior year, I was able to create a program of study centered around the automobile industry. And both years I focused on something different, but it allowed me to go and work at friends' dealerships and be able to compare processes and procedures that were happening in our store and at their store, and kind of compare and figure out, I mean, kind of like my own not idea session, but best practices on what I was seeing even in high school that could be beneficial for them in their dealership. So that really probably was the first time at that point of really me saying this is an industry that I would like to see myself in, and one day being in that chair that he sits in. So then I fast forward, I did graduate, and I went to started at Florida A&M University on a tennis scholarship. Even though Tallahassee was not Miami, I thought I was going to be around palm trees and beaches all day. But then I transferred to Emory University my sophomore year in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's where I graduated. So, you know, I would call my dad at times, and those in the Atlanta area, especially back in the late 80s, you know, that's when Atlanta Toyota was they were doing commercials till midnight. Then they would, you know, I'd stay up, you know, and they would go till 2 a.m. and I'd call him in the morning. I'm like, why can't we just do this? Can we just move everything to Atlanta? And he was like, doesn't really work that way. Because I was obviously trying to stay in Atlanta and not come back to Dayton, Ohio. But I put my thinking hat on after graduation, came back home, kind of did a little hiatus with teaching tennis for a while and selling nutritional products, which my dad actually thought was the most obscene thing to do, considering I'd just gotten a degree from Emory and he did not go to college. So he's like, I sent you to college to sell nutritional products and teach tennis. And I said, well, yeah, for right now. So I said, well, maybe I should start looking for, you know, a real job, because my roommate in college and we had it all set up. You know, we called our dads and said, we found this great apartment. It had all these services. We've been apartment hunting. And they were like, well, what about job hunting? Well, our job will be to find a job. They're like, yeah, no, you're coming home. So when I came home, I came into the dealership one Friday morning and told my dad's office manager that I was going to start a position that following week. And she was like, you may want to go in there and talk to him about that. And I said, well, why? I said, you know, he'll be okay. So I came in his office and I said, you know, hey, I got this great opportunity to start as a management trainee at a local telecommunications company. And he said, oh, hell no, you'll be here Monday at 8 o'clock. And I said, well, what am I going to do? He said, well, I have the weekend to figure it out. So just be here at 8 o'clock and we'll figure it out together. So I came in, and that was the early 90s, and customer relations was beginning to be the hot button in the retail side of the industry, of really gauging our customers. And obviously CSI is a big proponent of where we are now, but it wasn't then. So my job was to create our customer relations department for all of our brands and facilities. But hindsight is everything, because being involved in that position allowed me the opportunity to work seriously with all the managers that had known me as the dealer's kid. And so, you know, a good or a bad situation can come from any department, and how you handle it is, you know, the best way, or is the way of knowing if you're going to continue to have that customer and possibly get a referral out of them, or are you going to lose that customer? And so it really taught me, you know, working the art of working with people, as well as working with those that have a lot more experience than I do, as well as that may be older at the time. But it just really gave me a really good grounded sense of what the industry was about and what the retail side of the business really entailed, from the inside looking out instead of the outside looking in. So unfortunately, I worked in that role for 5 years. And then I also was going to grad school at the time, which was another interesting thing, because I'd gone to my dad and said, hey, I think I want to start working on my MBA. And he said, great. Do they have night classes? I said, well, I was hoping that you were going to tell me I could go to school full time and not have to work. He said, oh, you can manage. You can handle that. So I was going to school part-time and working full-time. And then that's unfortunately when my dad passed in 97, And that's when I inherited some large boots to fill, and I was 27 years old. So at that point, I was thrust into the leadership role of our dealership, responsible for the day-to-day operations of probably about 125 people at that point. So in partnership with my mother and my brother, we served as the dealership's executive management. And the one thing that I had to continue to do was build the confidence in the employees to continue to work with us, because unfortunately, when an auto dealer passes, there's a sense of a mass exodus, for lack of a better term. And we did not have that. And I attribute that to the way that my dad treated his team members, that they felt that he was a father, brother, son, uncle to them, and realized that they had a good opportunity. And that's something that we didn't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to make a few tweaks and changes along the way, because he had a very viable and great operation. So the one thing that was really the first thing that we really had to focus on was working with the manufacturers to establish who was going to become the dealer principal. And again, I'm 27 years old. I'm thinking, I'd been working 9 to 5, weekends were mine, evenings were mine. Well, not unless I was in school. But just this was a huge shift, but it was something that I took on because I knew the sacrifices that both he and my mother have made for decades for us. And, I didn't want to lose what was ours. And, the interesting thing is when you're sitting there with your corporate attorney and your corporate accountant, and they start going through the plan that he did have, which was not a very concrete plan because he was only 62. So he didn't think he was going anywhere, of realizing that if he hadn't done A, B, and C, that, the name on the sign could change. That's when it kind of hit me like, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure this stays with us as long as we want it to stay with us, and not someone telling us it's no longer a part of our family. So the next several months to a year were quite busy for me. I actually started and completed the NADA Dealer Academy. So for those that aren't familiar with what that is, it's basically a school to help you learn how to become an auto dealer and run and understand each department in the business. So normally you would go to class for a week and come back and work in that department for 6 weeks. They would tell me, everyone go back, say to the parts department, but we have a different list of things for Jenell to do because she needs to focus on things differently, because I had to look at the whole big picture instead of just one department. So as you can imagine, things were a little blurry for me during that time, but I really appreciate the opportunity of my team, as well as family support and the academy of getting me propelled to those next steps. So as a result of my father passing, my mother took over as president, and she had been in primary and elementary education prior to, so transitioning her into the presidency role was a little different, and not everyone gets the opportunity to work with two parents in that helm. And so I'm very fortunate in that regard. But her work experiences and her involvement in the community really helped continue to cement us that we did have the wherewithal to do what was needed to continue to represent the brands that we had, because we were doing a very good job, just not from a minority or female perspective, but just a good job of representing the brands that we had. Unfortunately, another change came about. My mother passed with breast cancer in 2010. And for those that can recall, there were, the recession of 08-09. And I mean, it started here in Ohio a little earlier. So through 10 was a very trying situation to go through, of losing your mom and also transitioning through that recession like everyone else. But I was very fortunate to have a very solid team. So unlike with my dad, when he passed, it was really pretty much like just jump in with both feet. I don't really remember grieving, because it was just like, I need to do whatever I need to do to figure things out. When my mother passed, it was more of a personal situation, to be able to really reflect on her and what, not that I wasn't able to reflect on my dad, but just in a different way. So as a result of my mother's passing, we have created the Norma J. Ross Memorial Foundation, which it is a 501c3 nonprofit. And the focus is helping underserved women affected by breast cancer and to engage youth across our community. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that towards the end. But my goddaughters actually came up with Pink Ribbon Driven, and hopefully you can see my pen. They came up with this. They called my attorney, had gone out on the internet to check, verbiage and words and everything that weren't taken, and came to me and they said, hey, we have a great slogan and tagline to go under the foundation. I was like, okay. And they're like, yeah, we've been on the, all over the internet. We've talked to Scott, our attorney. I said, oh, are you paying Scott for this information? And they're like, well, no, we just went to him to make sure that we could, use Pink Ribbon Driven. So, which was a great idea. So our logo hence has a road theme, driven to find a cure for the pink ribbon of cancer. We are in automotive. And so that we have been able to get that trademarked and has been a part of our foundation since the early years. So that's been a lot of fun. That's where we've kind of the fun side of this bittersweet initiative of our fundraising, because we have a lot of merchandise that everyone likes to wear all year round. My employees wear it. And then it was like, my husband's like, well, where's the men's stuff? And I'm like, okay. And then now I got people saying, are you going to get into kids gear? And I'm like, time out. No, we're done on men and women's. So it's kind of taken a life of its own. I had one office, and I know we're in retail, right? So I'm like, okay, it's not that difficult to sell a $35 t-shirt. I'm like, people just buy it. I'm not telling you to buy a $60,000 car. So I've taken from one office to now we have 3 offices of all the merchandise on site here at the dealership. So we have different partnerships with obviously the American Cancer Society, where we've raised close to $300,000 for them. We do have a lot of events that we're really focused on. We're getting into really on the preventive side of things, of helping women get screened, and the importance and education of that. And probably our biggest fundraiser to date is our Mercedes-Benz golf tournament, our championships, which we just had last week. And over the course of the last 10 years, we've raised close to $700,000 for the foundation. So really proud of what we're doing, considering I just hired an executive director right before COVID started, because everything was like rolling up in here of what I wanted to do. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got a day job. Oh, I'm sorry. See, I'm bad with this whole clicking thing. I'm looking at it, but so it's really important. We've been in this community for 47 years, and the legacy is really important because my parents did a tremendous job, both business wise and philanthropic, and that's something that really is very important to me. So anything that I do or involved in, it's one to make sure that I'm not misrepresenting them in any way or our organization. So it was after my mother passed is when I became president. And, the one thing that I just wanted to continue to do was continue to be on top, continue to be a leader in our industry, but also in our community, as well as providing a great opportunity for our employees and their families. So after my mother passed, we had kind of a change in our local market, because Dayton has always been historically a very heavily domestic GM town, and we no longer had a plant here. So that was a huge shift after the recession. So I had the opportunity to become a Fiat dealer, and then later I added Alfa Romeo because I didn't have anything that really fit in those windows of product lines. So it was something of exciting to do. But then considering we are in the risk-taking business, you also have to decide if it's something worth keeping. And so we no longer represent Fiat or Alfa Romeo, but it was fun while it lasted. And we won't say anything negative about that. And, but, one thing for me over these last 24 years is obviously I'm not your typical auto dealer. As Carrie said, there's very few people that look like me, black, white, green, or purple in the room. It is still a very white, male dominated, industry. A lot of our dealerships here locally are in their 3rd, 4th, 5th generation. So they have that foothold that a lot of minority dealers don't have the opportunity, as well as women dealers, to have that opportunity and that backbone and that reserve to really, when things get tough. And I still have to continue, even 24 years later, to tell my story of why I'm in the room, even with sometimes with the other dealers, the manufacturer reps, vendors. They may tend to go speak to my general manager, or if my husband's with me, they'll speak to him, and he's a dentist and he's like, I have no idea what they're talking about, and you need to go talk to her. And they're like, well, why would we want to do that? And he was like, because she's the one that's going to either be able to help you or not. And so then it's, the whole, like, they never forget you for after that. And they are even like, so how's your husband? And I'm thinking, who are you? Because I don't even, remember. But it's just, after all this time, it's very unfortunate that you still have to explain why you're in the room. But the one thing I will say is that you have to have fun with it. I've been mistaken for working for the travel company, which way is the restroom, where's the meeting? And I'm like, I don't know. I got the same questions, you do. Or they'll look at badges at NADA and thinking that you don't have the right color badge on. And I'm like, yeah, I have the dealer badge on. So I'm okay to be in this room. But it's just, you have to have fun with it. So if my general manager's with me, who for about 20 years was a white male. The last meeting we went to, he was standing there talking to another dealer. I was talking to someone else. And the gentleman said, well, so how long have you guys been married? And he said, oh, I've been married like 32 years. And I knew where this guy was going, but my GM was just like really following it. And he was like, finally figured it out. And he was like, oh, no. I'm not married to her. That's my boss. And he was just like, your boss? And he was like, well, you're the general manager. Who could she be? And he was like, the person that owns the dealership. He was like, oh, well, how does that happen? So it's nice when you have people that can fight your battles for you and see the rim, see the ending of that, and just to be able to have a good laugh. Because if not, at the end of the day, I feel that I'm educating those to let them know that I don't have to look like them or be like them to do what they do. And so, it's, if not, it would have eaten me alive a long time ago. So as long as I wish I could just wear my story, or push a button and say, here, go read this, and then come back and start talking to me. But like Carrie said, there's many challenges that we're still being faced with in our industry as minorities and women, of the lack of representation overall, since the recession of, coming out in 10. And obviously with the pandemic, there's been a lot of challenges that dealers have been faced with. And, unfortunately, I am the only African-American female to represent the brands that I have. And you would think in my 24-year time frame that would be different. And unfortunately is not. And so that's where I really try to, pre-COVID, during COVID, it's been a little harder to really reach out to schools, even elementary, middle, high school, colleges, to let them know that there's a lot of opportunity in our industry. Not just automotive retail, but if you like to draw, you can be that architect designing the next vehicle or the next building, or, marketing and advertising, or finance, accounting. I just try to always speak about what our industry means and what it can be for them, to kind of think outside the box. It's either they think we're selling used cars on the corner with the balloons and stuff happening, or it's the dirty job of being a technician. And nothing to slight, Patrice and what she's doing, but, you got to have a very savvy individual at this point to be that technician, to really understand the technology that we're putting in these vehicles. So it's no longer about turning wrenches. You got to have another level of skill set in order to make sure that we're remaining or keeping those vehicles in top condition for people's safety. And to me, that's just a huge responsibility, and should not be taken lightly. And so I appreciate all the training that our techs have to do, but it is a grind every day of making sure that they're staying on top of that. But there are other challenges as well for minorities and women, and access to capital is always a huge one, as well as location of potential opportunities if you do decide to be an automobile dealer, and where those retail locations are. I mean, for myself, if I was asked to go to a rural city, and somewhere I had no connection, I probably may not be as successful as an environment that would be a little more diverse, for me to be able to succeed. So, there's in the earlier years when my dad started, there was a lot of that in terms of dealers being placed in not so good markets. And now, the manufacturers do seem to be working a lot better with the dealers and providing better opportunity, even though we need more, and we understand that. But just trying to change the narrative on that piece, as well as just like I said, lack of opportunities. But I do feel that we do have a long way to go in regards to diversity, but there seems to be a better commitment from the manufacturers as well as vendors to really keeping everyone's feet to the fire. And that's even from my perspective as well. It's hard to just tell someone, okay, well, I don't want you in that position anymore. I'd like to have a woman, or I'd like to have a minority. We are very fortunate to have a lot of long-term managers and key employees, of which that worked with my dad even 24 years later. So for that, I'm truly grateful for their leadership. But our business is changing, our customers are changing, and so therefore the demographics on the retail end need to change, as well as those for the manufacturers, as well as vendors and suppliers, and on down the line. The one good thing though is that many more manufacturers are looking at expanding their minority dealer programs or including women to be a part of that. So the one thing that we just really need to do is push to let people know that those programs are available. If it's something that I can't help with, I definitely try to guide them and where they can go to help get that information. The one thing in terms of breaking barriers, when I was speaking of generational, is unfortunately I'm the only second generation African-American female auto dealer in the country. So I know there's a few up and comers that are coming behind me, and I'm excited about that, because that's definitely not one list that I want to stay in on my own. I know there's a lot of younger next gen coming through NAMAD and NADA, so that we need to really continue to focus and help bring them along in their path. And the current dealer body is definitely aging, and I think COVID has definitely kind of made others think about what their trajectory really is, and is it now time to get out if their family's not interested, and can there be some other opportunities that may have not presented itself prior to COVID, trying to find something good from the situation that hopefully that we could take advantage of. So, considering that most automobile purchases are influenced by women, probably over 90%, it's really important that we get more women to understand and be a part of our industry. And so that's really, like I said earlier, even speaking from a educational perspective in different schools or women's organizations or business organizations, to let them know that even though if they're in accounting, they may not necessarily, they don't have to see a car every day. They don't have to even know anything about a car, but we need you in the business to help continue and further that along. And just like I said, going back to just really letting people know that opportunities are endless in our industry, from the retail side, from the wholesale side, from the vendor side. We really need to continue to work on that. And actually, I have worked with our community college here, which we haven't started the program because of COVID, for a 1-year program to mirror exactly every department in our business with coursework at the university, so that they could have both the educational side as well as the real world work experience. And then they could figure out where they feel that they best fit in the organization long term. And to me, that was one way of trying to work and be creative of how we can bring new people into our industry, because someone may think, hey, I really liked sales, but then I got here and I really like being a service advisor, which still encompass some of sales, but in a different way, and you're still helping people. So we've been a little hesitant to start with COVID, but I'm excited about really what that means in helping someone further their education, which kind of hits on my mother's background, as well as bringing someone into the industry from my dad's side as well. So I've had the opportunity to receive a few accomplishments and surprised with a few honors, which those that know me know I'm really the behind the scenes person. I all of this is not really me, but I'm here. But I'm fortunate that in 2021, we're celebrating our 47th year as a Buick dealer, our 42nd year as a Mercedes-Benz dealer, and 39 years as a GMC dealer. So, you know, in spite of where we are in our crazy world right now, I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish in the 24 years. And a friend of my dad's called me a couple months ago and he said, do you realize that you've almost been, you're on the cusp, that, you know, you've been in this realm for 24. Your dad was in for 23. He's like, you've actually been a Mercedes dealer longer than your dad ever was. And I was like, what? I was like, never thought about it that way. So I don't take what I do lightly. I'm very serious about the opportunity that I have. I am very appreciative for the awards, and like Carrie said, of being included in the Automotive News Leading 100 Women. But I still feel that those boots, not shoes, are remotely being filled in any way, and that I still have a lot of growing and work to do. My parents were extremely involved in our community, and so that's one thing that I grew up with, and that's one thing that I still really am very philanthropic. And those that come to work for us that have been in other dealerships are really surprised at all that we do in the community. And I just see it as second nature, because I don't know any different, because unfortunately, other than those months in high school that I worked for another dealership, I've never worked to see what happens in another dealership. So one thing that I'm extremely proud of is that I had the opportunity to be AIADA's 2013 chairwoman, and AIADA is the American International Automobile Dealers Association. Say that fast 5 times, in 2013. And at that point, there had only been one woman to lead the organization and no minorities. So it was a wonderful opportunity to really learn a different aspect of our industry. And, you know, and in their 51-year history, to really have of their grassroots and the efforts of really standing behind what matters to the international nameplate dealer. So it's the Honda, the Toyotas, the Mercedes-Benz of the world. So, you know, the organization was really founded in regards to going back to like the chicken tax and dealing with things back in the 1971, which I was one. So whenever the association gains a year, I gain a year. So they're at 51, I'm at 51. So I can keep track of that. But it did give me the opportunity to really learn a different aspect of our industry, and that's from the political aspect and what that means in terms of understanding the laws that relate to our industry and how that they can either help or hinder what we're trying to do. And so as a result of being, on the board, I had the opportunity to testify in front of Congress regarding the estate tax. So with going through the situation with my dad and his estate, and then with my mom, you know, it really brought home how many family businesses can go under due to the financial obligations of paying that estate tax. So I learned a lot during that time. And then I just continued to get more ingrained in the organization, and ultimately became chair. But I am still very involved in other boards, both locally as well as public boards that are within our industry and outside, because I do like to continue to learn about different things and see how I can give back in different ways. So as we transition to our new normal, but which if anyone has figured this out, please let me know, because it is changing constantly day by day. You know, trying to navigate through the health of everything and making sure that we're continuing to keep all of our team members and our customers safe, dealing with the protocols, dealing with those that may not want to follow protocols as things are continuing to change, you know, in this Delta environment. You know, it has been a little draining over the last year and a half, to say the least, but you know, what that new normal is in terms of, I think today we have less than 28 vehicles on the ground for all 3 brands that we represent. So new vehicles. it is a new day, and everyone's having to pivot and figure out what that new normal is. And so that's where communication amongst your team is critical, as we continue to navigate through these challenging times. I mean, we continue to accommodate people through work schedules that are dealing with family challenges. And I think we're all being faced with that in one way or the other. But at the end of the day, we're still here to take care of selling and servicing our customers and making sure that they have the best experience possible when they step into our environment. But the one great thing it's provided me joy during the pandemic is through the foundation, we started a Say Yes campaign and Say Yes to Mammograms. So we have been working with both of our hospital groups to use the mobile mammography unit to take it to the community, to help those that are underserved or underinsured, to help them get their regular screenings, to help prevent and ward off breast cancer, as well as providing supplies monthly to all the oncology and infusion centers in the Dayton area for both hospitals and even my mom's oncology group, with supplies and PPE for them, from masks, gloves, gowns, wipes, you name it. We have it. So that's what we've been doing, as well as providing them lunch on monthly basis, because unfortunately breast cancer didn't stop during COVID. And so we still wanted to make sure that we were doing our part to help those in our community. As well as on the educational side, we've worked with several high schools in providing scholarships to those that were graduating, and also provided kindergartners in our area with a book so that they could read over the summer. And so they're getting ready to go back, and they will have to report back on their book to their first grade teachers. So that was kind of fun, because I actually ran into a young lady who had my mother in first grade and remembered her. And she said, I was her teacher's pet. I was like, okay. And you can remember that 50 some years later. So I know, hopefully I haven't gone too long, but just to provide you a few words of wisdom, my mother always lived by, to whom much is given, much is required. And through all of my experience, a few words of wisdom, you really have to, even though we have to practice what we preach, it's always best to be prepared and don't procrastinate. But I will say that happens. I'm human. Be ethical and moral in all you do, because all you have is your word, and your word is your bond. Always remain true to your principles, and don't let anyone sway you from what you want to do. There's always going to be those that don't want you to succeed, regardless of what industry you're in, what you're doing personally or otherwise. So make sure that you surround yourself with that core group of people that really truly have your back. And at the end of the day, just shake the haters off, because you don't need them in your life anyway. And you must love what you do, because if not, it's just a job. And with COVID right now, if I did not love what I did or what I do, it would be really challenging to come in this building or these buildings every day if you didn't really love what you do. And continue to challenge yourself to reach new levels of success. I mean, the one thing my dad always said to me is that you will never know everything about this business, and you have to have the continuous will and want to learn. And that is something that we have loads of opportunities through webinars now and other entities that we didn't have prior to COVID that we can all take advantage of. But just find those few things where you can pick up a niche here or there to help you either personally or professionally. And the most important thing is to have fun at whatever you're doing. Only you can make yourself happy. So I appreciate you guys being or allowing me to be with you this evening. And I wish all of you the best in your endeavors, and really appreciate what WOCAN stands for and what you guys are doing across the country.
Thank you so much, Jenell. This was amazing. I wish you could see all the comments. In fact, you should take a look at them at some point. I think Joyce says it well, such an amazing story of a purposeful life. And, I think you are continuing the legacy of what your dad started, what your mom continued. And that's just really inspiring to see.
Thank you.